Peace to the saints. Go ahead and confirm that the audio and video is good to go. Today's lecture, well, actually, it's not a lecture. We have you here. It's usually a lecture. It's just me here talking.
No, this is a conversation.
Indeed, indeed. And, you know, and if one of us was lecturing, it would be the doctor. So just heads up, everyone. Dr. Williams just arrived maybe 6 minutes ago. We haven't had any pre-conversation or anything like that. So she's fairly new to the platform. She's new to me. It'll be a great conversation. I think they would benefit by you giving a brief background educationally. You don't have to mention what institution you're currently at or anything like that, but you know, give them a rundown of your education, your areas of focus. And I think that they will really enjoy this because, one, it's one of the few times on YouTube you have a proper intellectual on camera. And then secondly, they've never seen anyone who can even near me in debating. And so I think that
I'm not sure I can either.
You got the best chance.
I'm not sure I can either, Marquette.
I'm teasing. Okay, so give the folks a little background on yourself.
Well, that's always interesting when someone asks me to give a little background on myself. I don't like to talk about myself a lot, but I am a part-time adjunct professor at UNLV in the College of Liberal Arts. I am a wife and mother of 3 children. One of them is deceased, and 4 grandchildren. And I relish in all of those roles. I'm also a very good friend and a good neighbor.
And a good neighbor.
Yeah, okay. and that's
I haven't heard that on anyone's resume yet. And a good neighbor.
The house next door is for sale. If you want to move in.
Right.
And I also have a wonderful Black Labrador retriever named Emily.
Okay. All right. And I'll give the folks a little bit more because I actually have your background, the official background pulled up right here. So I'll give them a few highlights. Quote, I identify strongly with first-generation students, of which I was one. So shout out. I identify as a Black feminist and as a feminist, which are 2 distinctions. And so we'll go through there. I kind of have that marked here. I'm curious about that. And, oh yeah, and just side note, everyone, she had asked me, she's like, yo, how'd you formulate your questions? Because I have some questions, and I told her. And so we're going to get into that, and I'll make sure I continue adding background on how I formulated my questions. And so there are a couple paths that we've crossed. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you're from a small California town. I wasn't from a small California town, but you went to Mills College. I actually had a friend who went to Mills College, which is an all women's college. I certainly couldn't have gone to an all male college. That seemed like the wrong time to be in a single gender environment. If you're heterosexual, that is.
Well, quite frankly, as my husband taught there for about 3 years, right?
Ooh, and he was coming up.
And our daughter, our oldest daughter, is a graduate of Mills as well. And one of the questions that often came up was, are there any guys there? Are there men there? Like when we'd go to mixers, as I was an undergraduate, and my husband's comment was, anytime you have 750 or 1,000 women, you're going to find at least that same number of men who come to visit. So we dated guys from Cal and from Stanford and from the local. I mean, this is when I was in college, this is during the Vietnam War. So we had officers coming through. So my point is, it may have been a single sex college, which of course it is no longer. It has gone co-ed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the Northeastern University at this point now. But there are always men around.
Okay, good to know. I believe it. Okay, so then and I went to Berkeley, so we were very close then in proximity.
And my master's degree is from Berkeley.
Oh, in English? Nope, English literature is undergrad, and the master's in library science.
Exactly.
Fantastic, from Cal, excellent. And then you also went for a law degree.
I have a law degree from Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, I've been to Oregon. Interesting place, very friendly people.
It is.
And then it says you have a PhD. You just keep going back to school.
You know, one of the things I've learned to do is to land on my feet. We were following my husband's career. And one of the things, as life sort of evolved for me, I realized what my callings were, where my talents were, and what I wanted to do. And that combination of education has allowed me to do what I want to do at the time that I want to do it.
You know what I'm going to tell you right now, based on my stereotypes about feminists, which is, you're not unattractive, which I generally categorize feminists as unattractive women. If they're white, they have their hair dyed blue or pink or some weird color, and they're overweight or really skinny. And if they're black, they're generally like a bull dyke.
Mm.
Yeah. So you seem to not fit any of those stereotypes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, you know.
Well, I am what I appear to be.
Yes.
So.
Huh. Curious. Now, have you observed that the feminists of today tend to take on those appearances?
No.
You haven't observed that.
No.
Curious.
No, that's a stereotype that exists in the minds of some.
Interesting. We're going to dig in there. This is fascinating. And let's get through the whole of your background, because I want them to know what your credentials are, which are significant, which are very significant. Lord knows I couldn't have gone to school this damn long. And the funny thing, actually, I didn't tell you that my tech company, we used to sell technology to universities. I actually remember working on a deal at University of Missouri, Columbia, and they would not do the deal, which was funny because I'd invented a technology, right? Effortless attendance. We can take attendance for 400 students without anyone lifting a finger, detects the presence of their mobile phone. They told me, no, the students won't deal with that. It was President Jeff Spain, I think, at the time. And then I left.
How long ago was that?
Oh, gee, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe more like on the order of 5 years.
There was a lot of people at the university, especially around issues like I think you're intimating, the sort of the refusal to really deal with African Americans. But I think a lot of people has come, and you probably would see a change now were you to make the same approach.
Well, I wouldn't, because I'm not in tech anymore. But the ironic thing is I was literally the inventor of the technology, like that category of business I invented. So I was the best at it.
That's too bad.
Then a couple of years later, a white guy who copied my technology, who lived in the same city where I had my headquarters, which was Chicago, he goes by and sells them the technology. I couldn't believe it. Like, good Lord. And I would say, very rarely do I point the finger of racism. I would say that was probably a little bit of racism. But I still believe that racism is not strong enough to stop anyone in America who's serious about what they're doing.
I would agree.
Yes. Okay, good. And that'll be one of our topics, kind of like an underlying topic, is race, since there's a differentiation between the feminists and the Black feminists. And what else do we have? There is my current research interests are the lived experiences of Black women over 50 years of age. What made you look at that distinct subcategory of female? Well,
turning 50 for one thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very much a part of it. And as we get into the conversations about intersectionality, then we will, it becomes a little clearer why that's an interest of mine. I think that's an area older women generally are, we're sort of coming into our own, but for the longest, we were invisible. And if you were
invisible to who? Because I see you right now.
Yeah, now you do.
Okay.
But maybe 10 years ago, you would not have, because the emphasis was very much of a youth orientation. I'm a member of the boomer generation. And as the boomers turned 50, we found ourselves in a very different kind of environment. And that was especially true for women of color and for Black women specifically. We tended to, because of the disproportionate gender discrimination that we had experienced, we had fewer accounts in retirement. Sometimes we didn't have retirement at all. Sometimes we didn't even have enough for Social Security. Because we've been at the sort of the bottom of the earnings ladder, turning 50 was a scary thing if you weren't already prepared. So that's one of the things. So my research question is, what has happened since you've turned 50? How would you describe your experiences since you've turned 50? And I'm not just talking to women who have advanced degrees, but women across a very wide spectrum of careers, non-careers, just life generally.
And one thing I forgot to warn you about before we start is that I will cut you off.
That's fine.
Not to stop you from making a point, but rather to move things
along. I do understand.
So do forgive me for that.
No problem.
Now, I don't know if you keep up with the news. I actually personally am not interested in the news, but I had a mentor in Baltimore. He said, a man who's going to have power must know what's going on in the world.
Mhm.
And so I try to keep up with it. There's a young lady named Sha'Carri Richardson, I think,
Yeah.
and she's a track athlete. And she
Mhm.
was busted for smoking marijuana
Right.
and then essentially was not able to compete because she violated the rules. Then there was a white female who was a minor, not an adult, and who apparently must have been caught having some drug in her system, not marijuana, perhaps not a recreational drug. And she was still permitted to compete. And Sha'Carri is now like complaining in the public. I find this to be distasteful for two reasons. Number one,
Which part is distasteful?
Sha'Carri complaining in the public.
Okay, not the fact that there's a disproportionate or disparate treatment.
You should expect disparate treatment, and here's why. Number one, this country was founded by hyper-religious whites on the behalf of their civilization. This was not a country founded for everybody. And so if we can acknowledge that reality, it should not be shocking that in the land that enslaved you for hundreds of years and then denied you equal rights, that, things still might not be quite right after that. You'd be foolish to expect equality. And what she's screaming for right now actually is not equality. She's actually screaming that the rules be broken in the same way for her. But here's the thing, you can't undo what happened to you by denying this other young lady her opportunity. I think, well, of course, the rules should be executed uniformly, but we should also acknowledge that Sha'Carri was an adult. The girl's a minor. Sha'Carri was using a recreational drug. The other drug's not a recreational drug. And more,
what was the other drug?
It was something having to do with the heart, like some kind of heart medication. But to me, it's immaterial. The point is this. One thing I thank my grandmother for teaching me, she was a Black woman, a very dark-skinned Black woman who grew up in Lone Oak, Arkansas, and picked cotton growing up. I thought she was a slave until I got to middle school. I thought she was an actual slave from the story she told me. But one thing she told me, she says, you will always have to work 3 times harder than white folks if you expect to get anywhere. And if you don't beat them by a mile in a race, they'll say you lost. I grew up with that ethic and I executed it. It carried me very far. The challenge with Black people today is they don't realize you're a conquered people in the land of your former conqueror. Why would you expect that same person to treat you equitably? That's foolish.
So what do you think the solution is, Marquette?
The solution to what?
To the conundrum that you've just outlined.
It's no conundrum. Life is excellent in the United States. And I've traveled around the world and I can verify that this is perhaps the best place to be, whether you're Black, blue, purple, or white. But we have to acknowledge what's within our locus of control. To use marijuana is within your locus of control. You knew the rules in advance. She's not living under Jim Crow situation. She's living under a situation where if she would have followed the rules, she would have been able to run her race. She potentially could have won and she could have had a gold medal. That was self-sabotage. And
so how does that relate to your questions about Black feminism and feminism? How does Sha'Carri's situation relate to that?
Because the media has picked this up as a Black female issue, when in reality, I actually don't think it's a Black issue, except that she accused it to be a racist
So
thing.
how I have not heard how the media has shaped the narrative. Maybe you can inform me.
Well, she's even shaped the narrative in the context of racism. So those are the headlines.
How has the media shaped it, though? What have they said? As a Black female, when you said they have stated it as a Black female issue, tell me, what does that look like?
It looks like them saying that Sha'Carri received different treatment because she's a Black female, having violated the same thing, which is not true.
How does that work? I guess I'm a little confused because I thought we were talking about feminism and Black feminism. How does that relate? Help me get on the same page with you.
Well, number one, that when she's trying to suggest that the result of her being barred is because she's a Black female, she's carving out she's identifying herself as a unique group, a unique interest group.
Okay.
Black female.
Right.
I surmise that the Black feminists, and you'll have to explain to me what the unique issues are therein, that the Black feminists would believe that they are a unique group that's disadvantaged in the society, so they have to fight for their rights.
I understand what you're saying, Marquette, and I think I see where your mind is running to, but that is not necessarily a feminist issue. It's about a young Black woman. It's more of a criminal justice disparate treatment issue, which does not necessarily mirror Black feminist or Black feminist thought.
What actually, before we go into that, my first question before that is, what's your primary identity? Is it as a Black person or as a Black woman?
I identify as a Black woman.
So does woman come first or does Black come first?
I saw that question.
Yes.
And you said, let's see, where was it? You said, what's first, race or gender?
Right.
So when you say what's first, are you talking specifically about identity or about where the focus should be?
Good question. And I forgot, at some point, Bridge will be interrupting us to share the questions that folks are sending in, because
okay.
I don't want to make it my own personal interest show, my own personal questions. I want to give them a chance to get schooled.
I thought it was.
So forgive me. But would you repeat your question one time for me?
Well, I saw your question, which was, what's first, race or gender? And my question was, when you ask about the order of things, are you referring to identity, my identity, or our philosophy? Help me to understand your question.
Good question. I'm speaking twofold. So number one, what do you identify as primarily? What's most important to you? And then secondly, in terms of where you're pushing an issue, where you're trying to achieve an end, under what identity is that? And I'll give you just a little bit more.
Okay.
So for example, if someone asked me, like, do you identify first as a man or first as a Black man? Well, I would say I identify first as a Black man because that was first as Black because that was the identity that I was raised in most strongly.
Okay.
I was made hyper conscious of being Black for a variety of reasons, not only from my family, but also the outside world. And then secondly, the reason I don't identify as a man first, because when I go through the world and I operate, when I encounter roadblock, it will generally come because I'm Black, not because I'm a man. So for me, I identify first as Black, and then secondly as man, if I had to split the two, as I'm asking you to do.
Okay, I wouldn't split the two. See, that's the difference between the way we approach it, is I don't split the two. I am a woman who is Black. I am a Black woman. And because, and the whole issue of Black female or Black person, Black women operate at the intersections of a number of discriminations. One of them is as a Black person. When they see me walking down the street, they see a Black person. Okay. In some situations, other situations, they see a Black woman coming through the door.
Not a woman, but a Black woman.
A Black woman coming through the door. And then there are some few issues, some few situations, environments in which the fact that misogyny is so strong that.
Do you really believe that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wait,
and I have
misogyny
lived it.
Is the hatred of women.
It's a hatred. It's a hatred of women. And it can be hatred of women by Black men as well. So that's why
hatred is very strong. What evidence of that could you give me today?
Well, just in terms of, hatred is a word that has several shades to it. All right. There are some shades that are very strong, and there are some shades, some hues that are weaker. So if you don't like women, period.
As in, like, you're a homosexual.
Homosexuals don't necessarily dislike women. Okay. In fact, many of them really like the way women look and have friends who are women. I have gay male friends.
I bet you do, as a feminist. And that's
not just as a feminist, your questions are interesting.
Absolutely.
But I think that, so you have this intersection of various kinds of discrimination that Black women face. And we're there because we are Black and because we're female. So we experience these kinds of discriminations.
So you're saying that you hold those two together because the discrimination you experience is rarely just as a woman or just as a Black person.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
It can be Again, it really depends on the situation that you're in. And I've been in lots of different situations in my age group,
Sure.
as you can imagine.
Yes.
All right, both academic and business, both just social, just any kind of situation you can imagine. So we experience all of it.
If you were going to identify the outcome, if there was a singular outcome of the Black feminist struggle, what is that?
A singular outcome. Explain more of what you're talking about.
So, for example, if you said, Marquette, what is the outcome of the work that you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say my outcome is for folks to follow this 3-sentence Bible, which is number 1, be yourself. Number 2, be good to yourself. And number 3, be good to good people.
Mm-hmm.
The idea with be yourself is most people have not the foggiest idea of who they are. They missed out on the Mr. Rogers generation when he told you you were born the right way and you're growing up just right.
Mm-hmm.
You see, people nowadays have significant identity issues, which is a mental illness. And it was in the diagnostic book, and it was taken out due to political protest, not due to academic research, which makes it atypical.
What are you referring? You're referring to the DSM.
Correct.
Okay. What are you referring to that was taken out of the DSM?
I believe they call it gender dysmorphia now,
Mm-hmm.
I think is the term that they've created. But
Right.
essentially, that along with a number of practices that are described by the alphabet letters were all described as mental illness. And
Mm-hmm.
historically, when you remove a designation from there, it's accompanied by scientific or peer-reviewed
Mm-hmm.
journals, right? The academics, they write it out and they battle and they say, okay, we're going to remove this, or we're going to improve the definition. But in this unique situation, I want to say it was 1974. I forget. I don't think about this stuff much, but it was removed due to protest. And that is unique in the history of that organization.
Okay. So what are specifically referring to homosexuality?
Well,
what are you referring to? You're not being real. I'm having a hard time tracking you.
I think with all your degrees, I think you track me pretty well.
No, I don't like to make assumptions about people. So I'd like for you to be clearer.
So when I
who you're
said
talking about.
when I said identity, let's specifically talk about those who are born male
Okay.
or born female,
Mhm.
because I said being yourself. You're born male or you're born female, and at some point you say out of your mouth that you are identifying as a woman.
You're identifying as the opposite sex. is what
You're
saying.
identifying as something that you're not.
Okay.
Yes, like me identifying as a frog. That is what's happening. And then what's worse is that you go on to mutilate the body.
So
You
you don't
hurt the
believe that
self.
you don't believe that certain people are born wired differently.
You're correct. People have different wiring. And when
Mhm.
you observe something occur at a certain small percentage in the population, is generally called a defect, like a genetic defect. For example, if you were born blind, you
Mhm.
couldn't see out of your eyes, we wouldn't say, oh, that's okay. We would say you have a disability or you have a genetic defect would be the
Mhm.
reality of things. And in this era of euphemistic circumlocution, we create all these words to explain things that are quite clear.
Well, I'll be honest with you,
Yes.
Marquette. I'm on thin ice here because I'm not a biologist and
Sure.
I'm not a physician. So I can only look at this from, I'm an education sociologist. And so I can only look at it from that perspective. And my general perspective is that people are born wired differently.
Mhm.
I can't argue whether they are being disingenuous or
Oh no, they're serious.
heavily
No, they're
influenced,
serious.
heavily influenced by politics or not. That's not something I can argue.
I hear you. And I think from the left, that's probably the wisest answer I have ever heard, because all of the science disagrees with the claims. Do you want to hit us with some of those super chats?
Yes, so Anthony Tibbs said, peace to the saints. My name is Anthony Tibbs. I'm 18 years old and recently enrolled in the boss level on Patreon. All love. Thank you for your knowledge.
Peace of the Saints.
We have a plus MVP.
Baller alert.
He said, setting the stage right for the Saint Nation and the mayor of Saint City. Hit the like button, everybody, and please be respectful as we are all representatives of an honorable culture. Peace to the Saints.
Peace of the Saints. It's a beautiful message.
He came back and said, everybody welcome Anthony Tibbs.
Indeed. You're caught up?
We have Marcus Otato said, peace to the Saints. Thank you to both of you for your time. Make sure you get the likes up for the video.
And definitely, I think I think they should already be very impressed.
And then Sean Muhammad said, peace to the Saints.
Peace of the Saints.
And then Nora said, peace to the Saints. There are no Black middle-aged women to be a role model. Black women over 40 want to see younger women fail in relationships and in the workplace.
Ooh, hold that one up there for a second. Do you think we can reasonably surmise that Honora is a Black woman?
I believe so. She's made comments.
That's
Okay.
interesting. And I'm sorry if she's having that experience, I'm really sorry to hear that, because that is not how I would approach it. And I know my sorority sister sitting over here wouldn't approach it that way either. Both of us have been very involved in leadership. In fact, we have a project coming up very soon in which we are looking at role models. Part of the reason there are not role models in the workplace.
Now, mind you, I don't know anything about this.
Okay,
I'm going to pause real quick. She made one more comment in the chat. She
Okay.
said, I've never felt oppressed as a woman. Again, it's always been the older women in my community who have tried to tear me down.
Wow.
Like, you had your 20s already. Let me have mine.
Yeah.
Let me live.
And that's,
Goodness.
and that's a point of view. And I know a lot of women share that. A lot of young women may share that point of view.
Have you
And that's
ever heard of
unfortunate.
this?
Have I ever heard? I've heard
from Black women. Like, I obviously am not a Black woman, so this is completely outside of my experience. But have you heard younger Black women speak like this, or have you observed older Black women be unpleasant to the younger ones?
Yes.
In a consistent way.
I have seen that, and again, it's environmental. I've seen it in some certain environments. I've been in environments when I was for example, when I became a librarian, 150 years ago, there were very few Black women on the West Coast and in the Midwest who were librarians. The Black women who were librarians tended to be in the South and in the East, with a few in places like Chicago and maybe Kansas City, but mainly Chicago and places like that. I remember going to a ALA conference with 3 other young Black women librarians. All of us were just finishing up our degrees, meeting and a couple of older Black women who were very cold to us. They were not supportive. So has that changed? I would hope that it has, but clearly in her environment, and I don't know where she is, I certainly would be. I try to mentor whenever I have young women in my class, especially young Black women. I try to mentor them to the extent that they will allow me to. But I do think that I don't think she's wrong. I just think she is in the wrong place.
Well, apparently she is. Now, let me ask you this again from the outside. Is this a Black woman thing or is this a woman thing?
I think it could be either one. It just depends. You've heard the queen bee syndrome?
No.
Queen bees can be of any color. Okay.
So in this case, you think that there may be something unique within the African-American female culture that is
not necessarily unique. It's unique only in the sense that the expectation would be that an older Black woman would be willing to help empower a younger Black woman. That's the only thing that's unique about it.
I like that. That's very insightful. And, when I was a younger man, I was very hyped up on Black people together. And then I realized that doesn't exist in as much as you've had an unraveling of culture, especially post desegregation. I won't say integration, but we'll say desegregation.
Yes, very true.
And then with television as well, you've had the crumbling not only of African-American culture, but of culture in general.
Generally, yes.
And as a result, whereas one thing I can tell you, having grown up in Southern California, I remember distinctly, there were certain things you did not do as a Black person. Like you just didn't do it. And I remember my grandmother would even say having dogs inside your house, that's what white people do. That's what you heard that too?
I have heard that.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And then now you see Black folks with their dogs and they love them. They're kissing them. And I'm just like, whoa, which is to say that culture is completely broken down.
Well, it hasn't broken down as much as it has evolved.
Tell me more about that. Because evolve means going up generally. When people hear evolve, they think as though things are reaching a new height.
Well, again, it's all about where you are and your perception of life. Seriously.
See, I find that culture has devolved.
Well, it depends on what culture you're talking about.
And I would say around the world, I'll give you an example. And fortunately, you might not be on TikTok and social media.
No, I try to avoid those. However, my granddaughter is very active, and so is my daughter. Yeah,
save her from it. When I was in high school, to admit that you watch pornography as a male would be a source of great embarrassment. It was unheard of to even think that a female watched pornography.
Mhm.
And I'm not that old. Today, you have females who are 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and they have an OnlyFans link for their own personal pornography that they sell to the public. And they have no sense of shame about it.
What percentage of people or young women are doing that, though? You will always have
It's
people.
actually not about the percentage. What it's really about is the perception. I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
For example, there's a study that Gallup does, the polling organization.
Yes.
And when they ask people, what percentage of America do you think is homosexual? Women thought 1 in 3, about 33% is homosexual,
Mhm.
which is way higher than it actually is, according to Gallup. And the reason is perception. You
Mhm.
see, some voices are louder and some things shine brighter, especially in the media. So when you have even a small percentage of high school girls or young women
Mhm.
who try to make a profit off of their body, objectifying the self, then you create a cultural pathway of acceptance. And females are very social animals, even more than males. And that becoming a norm creates decay in the society.
Well, I think you have a point. However, I guess I would question what appears to be your perception that there is a proliferation of young women looking at porn. And I know every now and then you see these articles about what is it called, revenge porn and
Oh, yeah,
all those
yeah.
kinds of activities. And the first thing I always ask myself is, well, what were you doing taking pictures of yourself in the first place and sending them by email? I mean, that kind of thing. So I think it's not, you could identify it as a breakdown of culture, but I also think it's a breakdown of parenting. It's because,
That's correct.
I would be stunned if any of my girls had done something like that. And they would be stunned if any of their girls are doing anything like that.
Your girls were raised by a mother and father.
Yes.
Their father is a male.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Generally, when you have a mother and a father, one's a female, one's a male, and they stick together, generally things come out better. And all the data indicates such.
Well, and that's true. But at the same time, there are some same-sex marriages that have children that do very well.
There are some.
Right. Just like there are some who are practicing porn as teenagers. I mean, the thing is, you can't generalize to stereotypes. And I like to try to avoid that.
No, I'm not generalizing. I'm speaking to the data. I was speaking to the data when I said that.
Data can be.
I'm speaking to the data.
Data can be misinterpreted or reinterpreted any kind of way.
It's ironic.
You can make data say anything that you want it to say.
Well, I'm just speaking to what the data does say. For example, when you look at pedophilia, if you look at pedophilia, for example, pedophilia is overwhelmingly homosexual in nature. And you have to ask yourself, okay, well, this makes perfect sense because none of us consider pedophilia to be a mentally healthy activity. And then we find that it's overwhelmingly homosexual.
Once again, I'm on thin ice. I am not a biologist. I'm not a psychologist.
But you are an intelligent woman with more degrees than I have. So you won't make an inference because
no, I won't. Because I think a lot of what you're saying, you have a very specific point of view. And I respect your point of view. It's just that I don't agree with you.
Well, there's nothing to agree with on
there is
data.
Because if we spend a lot of time talking about data, which you don't have here in front of you, then basically it's not as productive as what I thought we were going to talk about.
We can talk. We'll talk about that as well. But I think we can both agree. Are you suggesting that you do not believe that the overwhelming number of documented cases of pedophilia are homosexual in nature?
I would have to see as a research analyst, I don't want to spend time looking at that because that's not what I came here to talk about. And that is not my wheelhouse.
And the reason that I bring it up, because often we find that feminism and LGBTQ seem to be deeply linked, particularly because the virulent form of feminism, or I should say the strain of feminism that's popular today, which is gender feminism, not equity feminism. Gender feminism is often man-hating, misandrist, and it's often led by women who are not even heterosexual, they're homosexual. And so they have a double agenda in pursuing the marginalization of the male.
This is a good example of stereotyping.
No, I've read up on this.
No, I know you've read up on it, but we can read anything, quite frankly. I read stuff that you probably don't read. But the point that I want to really stress here is you have a point of view. It is very clear what your point of view is. It is anti-feminist,
No, I am a feminist.
No, hold on. It is homophobic. It is anti-feminist, and it's very socially conservative. And I respect that. If that, no, hold on, let me finish. If that is your position, I respect your position, and I respect your perception. I don't share them, and I didn't come here to argue with you about them, because remember I told you before we went on the air, I expect to be civil, and I do not expect this to be the Jerry Springer show. Okay, so I would like to stick to the topic that we came to talk about, feminism, and that excludes labeling every feminist as a LGBTQ person, a man hater, which is where I see this going. And I'm very uncomfortable with that.
On number 4, my question, it writes, are feminists / LGBTQ necessarily connected? Right.
And explain that question to me.
But real quick. So one thing that I find that the left does, which I think is really dangerous for 2 reasons. So when you describe me as homophobic, a phobia is a medical diagnosis. A phobia is a medical diagnosis. So
but it's also a description of people who do not like people who are gay.
No,
yes, actually it is.
No, it's not.
That's how it's used in the media.
Wrongly used. That's how it's weaponized.
And you were weaponizing feminism.
A phobia is a fear of something. It is a medical diagnosis. So when you're accusing someone of having a medical condition, what you're doing is, number 1, you're discounting their intellect and their position.
Not at all. The thing is, are you afraid of homosexuals?
And then number 2,
why do you dislike homosexuals?
I'll get to your question.
And why do you clarify? Why do you describe all homosexuals as pedophiles?
I will get to your question. And when you call someone homophobic and you utilize medical language, you're not a medical professional who can identify a phobia. So that's really strategic language that the left uses to shut people down, which is dangerous because we should not use medical language to portray someone as crazy.
Well, and one of the things that the far right does.
I'm not saying you invented that, by the way. I'm just saying.
I know, but what I am saying is that from the far right, one of the things they do to shut down women's efforts to empower themselves, whether they're Black or Hispanic or Asian or white, is to accuse them of being homosexual or
I'm
being
not accusing
lesbian.
you of being homosexual. No, I hope you're not.
No,
good-looking woman. We need her.
I think that is so insulting.
What's that?
To say I'm good looking and therefore you need people who are not homosexual.
I'm teasing.
But see, that's an example of what I'm talking about.
I think there's nothing wrong with teasing, and I think
there is when you couch it in this sort of language which says, oh, it's kind of a backhanded compliment, and that's
you have to acknowledge when you sat down. The first thing I did was I went through your entire background because I wanted everyone to know that you are a significant intellectual presence and that you're very educated. And so I don't think it's even reasonable to pretend as though that I don't have respect for you and as though that my compliment is not sincere. They're sincere on both sides.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. But like I said, I'm a kind of disappointed that we're not talking more rationally, perhaps, about some of the things I thought we were going to talk about, because there are lots of different casts that we can put on the discussion of feminism or anti-feminism or misogyny or any of those kinds of things that I came prepared to discuss. But we seem to be going someplace else, which is a little surprising.
Well, I think they're intimately linked. Like, for example, while I put on question number 4, are feminists and LGBTQ necessarily connected? I think they're very much so linked. That's why we're discussing it. But I'll tell you this. You said that I was anti-feminist. I'm actually a real feminist.
Okay. Do you just describe how does your real feminism look?
Right. And so when I say I'm a real feminist, I'm an equity feminist, which means that You should have equal opportunity. If you so choose to attempt the same thing that I'm attempting, we should have the equal opportunity of success.
And we have no quarrel there.
Right, right. And to me, that is the aim of feminism, is that you are not denied and limited and stopped from achieving your potential because you're female.
Exactly. And that is one of the, you asked me earlier, what was one of the goals of Black feminism? Black feminist thought examines those multiple areas of discrimination so that women can overcome them and become empowered to achieve what you are calling equity feminism.
Correct. See, to me, that's the only feminism. What's reigning is gender feminism, which I think is destroying and eating up feminism.
Well, obviously there are those who may want to practice that, but I don't focus on that. I focus on what makes a difference to empower African American women and other women of color. And one of the questions that you asked, differences today, your question number 3, differences today.
And historically between
Black and white feminism. I think that's a very legitimate question because it sets the stage for where we are right now and why we are looking at intersectionality and examining what our past has been. The whole idea of gender discrimination began in slavery for Black women. And there was a time when, especially as we approached the late 19th century, when, this is post-Civil War time, Black women, especially Black women clubs, like clubs that came out of churches, National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, and church women, church ladies, were very involved in fighting these negative stereotypes of Black women, because Black women were talked about as, you were either mammy. In fact, in her book,
you'll have to elaborate for the audience on what a mammy is.
Okay, mammy is, I don't know how many people have been able to withstand watching Gone with the Wind, but not many, I'm sure. And it's probably a generational thing on top of that, unless you've been in a film class, you probably haven't seen it.
Ain't Jemima the woman on the syrup?
Who is formerly,
bottle?
No, actually she was on the box of pancake mix too. A picture of Aunt Jemima. It's now a different box. But that was a woman who took care of the household, the plantation household. She raised all the children, even to the extent of wet nursing them. And her life revolved around the children and that family. And that was the icon that was set for Black women. In fact, Melissa Harris Perry, in her book, Sister, I can't remember the whole title, but anyway, she talks about the fact that there was actually an effort to put a statue of Mammy on the walkway by the White House, on that park. And so this is one of the images that has haunted Black women. And the other image is as a prostitute or as a woman of easy virtue. And that was put forth, that was actually published in newspapers. They have newspapers that go back to in Missouri, in which they were shown, it said, when Black women are not morally fit, all that kind of stuff. These women like Mary Church Terrell and Julia Cooper, they campaigned to change this image of Black women because it was affecting everything, including being able to get something other than washerwoman jobs or jobs, being somebody's nanny. So they were the ones who actually fought for, they were the first Black suffragettes. They were not, when you talk about the difference between historical differences between Black and white feminism, when they tried to join, because they wanted to vote also, because if you'll remember, the first Blacks to get the votes were men, not women. Okay, because we're still very much a patriarchal society. They wanted to get the right to vote, and they wanted it just like the white women did, who protested when Black men got the vote, because they're saying Black men have got the vote, but you're not letting white women vote.
Well, white
So-
women got to vote before black men, I'm pretty sure.
No, black men got the vote first. They were included in a couple of the amendments. And one of the amendments.
So universal voting for black males came before white women?
Actually, yes. The 19th Amendment is the one that gave now you're talking, there are some isolated areas, but the 19th Amendment is the one that gave women the right to vote.
Okay.
And the suffragettes the suffragettes would not entertain black women being a part of it.
Right.
And
Fair
so,
enough.
yeah,
Why would they?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to offend their Southern friends. So black women have always had this fight that we had to put forth. And when you ask about the difference between the two, that's one of the basic differences, is where we came from.
That's actually a really good explanation, and I appreciate that. Would you say that if you were trying to drive away these stereotypes presently, because I think a lot of them in terms of the black female being a harlot still exists.
Unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah, and with 70% illegitimacy, I think that there's a lot of evidence to support that. And so for me,
the point is, you have to ask yourself, Marquette, it takes two to tango. Where are these babies coming from?
Yes, and men are in tremendous disrepair.
And if you want to talk about cultural, the cultural devolution,
yes.
That is an area that's an area that I'm very sensitive to, because the minute you are as a high school girl has a baby, you have almost condemned yourself to a life of poverty unless
Correct.
you stay in school, because if you want to talk about data, the data shows that when young women have children in their teens and they are not married, or even if they're married, typically they don't go back to school. So you basically have a situation in which you have a young woman with no education who has to rely upon the government or menial jobs. And maybe at some point she has the support and the wherewithal to go back to school.
Yes.
But typically, too often, it doesn't happen. So that's why I think it's very important for young women to feel empowered, to have agency for their own bodies, so that they don't get into situations where they basically cut themselves off from a
so
future.
What do you mean by agency for their own bodies?
Well, an agency, what is agency? You're in business. What's agency?
Well, I'm saying, what do you mean in specific? What are you
Well,
saying? Basically,
agency is when you have self-determination. What is your,
Well, do they not have control of their bodies now?
Sometimes they don't. In the case of rape and incest, they don't.
Those are the rare situations.
No, they're not rare. They're not as rare. No, they're not
resulting
rare at all.
in childbirth?
Yes, they're not rare at all.
I would say statistically speaking, it is rare, but it's
only because it appears to be rare, only because it doesn't get reported as much.
Incest resulting in childbirth?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say this. This is what my solution is for the excluding those cases.
Okay.
Whether they're common or rare.
Okay.
Excluding those cases. We agree on what the data says, which is that if you're a young lady and you're impregnated, your life is going to be rocky and that child's life is going to be rocky.
It will. The chances are very good that it will. There are exceptions.
We understand that. But the likelihood is that it will be rocky.
Right.
And when we're talking about promiscuity, often women in particular, well, what about these guys? I'm like, you're right. These guys are out of control. There's no doubt about that. But you're the one that's left with the baby.
Exactly.
And so what I always tell them is like, yeah, you both should not be promiscuous, but the consequence to you is much higher. And the oxytocin is going to bond you to that child. And you're actually going to stick with it. Guy's going to turn his back on that child and go meet another girl and might not even mention that he has kids.
Exactly.
So under the culture that I share, promote, and train on is females must be good stewards of their body and be hyper conscious about whom they lay down with to prevent that.
And do you also teach that to the men?
I tell men that they should be thoughtful about the women they lay down with. But the reality is that this is a bigger case to emphasize with the women because they suffer the consequences. So this is what I'm telling you.
I can understand. I don't necessarily disagree with you, Marquette. I only disagree with you. I disagree with you to the extent of taking what you're saying a step further.
Okay.
Both need to be good stewards of their body.
Correct.
And both need to be responsible. Yes, by virtue of who has the baby biologically, women have a greater risk. However, it still has to be impressed upon young men and older men too, as far as that goes, that you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to be a good steward of your body, if for no other reason than disease.
I agree. I think we agree wholeheartedly there. I will say, though, that I also am hyper conscious about sharing the reality that the male and the female are different, which again, this is one of my major disagreements with contemporary feminism, is that it posits that the male and female are the same, which is a complete lie.
Well, first of all, I think one of the challenges I'm having in having this conversation with you is that I feel that you are, how shall I put this? I feel that you are lumping everything together under one title. You call it contemporary feminism. Yes. But on the other hand, you say, well, I am a feminist. But I'm an equity feminist. But you say contemporary feminism, though, that puts everybody under one big umbrella, and that's not true.
So when I say contemporary feminism, I'm referring to gender feminists. Gender feminists are those feminists who are hyper focused on promoting the idea that the male and the female are the same, and they're often those who are attempting to marginalize the male.
Well, I'm not going to argue that point, because I don't feel they are as important as looking at the issues that Black women, Black feminist thought brings up, and that some radical feminism brings up as well. And it's not a question of, because I think you will, well, maybe you won't, but I think you will agree that there are some situations. For example, for years, women were not allowed to be fireperson.
Like a firefighter?
Yeah, they weren't allowed to be firefighters. All right. But they have found that there are places where women have the kind of body strength, the same way in the military. Women were not allowed to fly planes, except during World War II when they were doing transport.
Sure.
Now there are women who fly fighter jets. There are women in certain infantry.
Do you think it's right that the military lowers their standards to allow women to join?
I'm not sure if they lowered their standards or if they changed them.
For example, with pull-ups, they allow.
Let me give you another example. In
but
San
just real
Francisco,
quick on the pull-up side, like for example, and this is what I mean.
Well, are those standards? See, the question is, were those standards realistic? Because for example, yeah, were the number of pull-ups that you had to do, were they realistic? Again, I'm not in the military, so I don't know. But I'll give you a very good example. Is in San Francisco, they had a height limitation for police.
Meaning a minimum?
A minimum height, sure. A minimum height.
Yes.
Well, what they found was that it unfairly and disproportionately,
of course, women,
disadvantaged Asians.
Okay. Fair.
Many Asians. Yeah. So they changed the height requirement without compromising any of the effectiveness of the position of the position. And see, and that's what happens with a lot of it happened. And that's what happens with a lot of these so-called standards that are for men and standards that are for women. It may be that the standard wasn't really necessary to get the job done. And that's what they have to be. Now, can you put that as a sort of a blanket, standard? No, you have to look at each job independently to see what is fair.
Let me ask you a question. And I like your point there. It's well taken, because you're saying that we should assess if the standard is related to the duty to be executed. And that's meaningful. I will just side note say the one time that the White House was invaded by people on foot, it was a female security agent who messed it up, and it was due to size. But just coming back to what we're touching on here. There are a
number of, hold on, as long as you bring that up, there are a number of factors that were impacted that.
Multiple variables
on that one. So maybe you can think of another example.
Let me ask you this. If you were an important person who had potential threats on your life and you were going to have a bodyguard as you walk through a crowd, would you prefer a large man or a large woman?
No, I would prefer a highly skilled personal protection person,
Do
somebody
you-
who is trained,
Do
who
you believe
Krav
that
Maga.
say you have a woman who's well trained in Krav Maga, whatever the Israelis do, and you have a male, they're both the same height and same weight, and they're trained at the same level. Would you prefer the female or the male?
I would prefer either one. I don't care.
See, that's where I know you're being unreasonable, because all of the science.
In your opinion,
no, I'm going to tell you why.
No, in your opinion,
because you're being escorted by someone whose job is to exert physical force and to leverage violence if necessary. And in terms of physicality, the male, even if you have equity in height and equity in weight, the male has better fast twitch muscles. They have more muscle mass, and their bodies are literally designed to outperform the female in almost every physical task.
Well, in that case,
so that
I'll
lets
make
me
sure
know that you're being unreasonable. And I can
I'm not
respect,
being unreasonable. It's
no,
just
it is
that
unreasonable.
no, hold on. See, we're getting to Jerry Springer territory here.
No,
and
it's
no,
unreasonable.
it is. You're calling me unreasonable. I'm simply saying we have a different perception. Because quite frankly, if I'm somebody who really needs a bodyguard, I'm probably going to ask somebody to be carrying a Glock 9.
The challenge is that when you're operating and walking through a crowd, which, for example, when I was in Nairobi, I had to walk through crowds with armed guards.
Why?
Because I was going through certain places where that was recommended for me. But the point, have you been to Nairobi?
No, I have not.
All right. So it will be a long story.
Okay.
But the point is, just like a police officer, an armed guard's instinct is not to pull out a gun and shoot someone. Their instinct and training, I hope, should be to disarm them in the most effective way without loss of life. Well, so if you're walking through a crowd and you're telling me you would prefer a female to a male, it's not sensible, because we already know the male is better suited for physicality. That is our natural advantage.
But my point was,
inherent advantage.
My point was, I didn't care which. That's what I said. I said either one would be okay if they were trained. That's what I said. You said I would prefer to have, you implied.
What you would prefer. Yeah. And you said you don't care.
I don't care.
And you're entitled to that.
I don't care.
And you're entitled to that.
What you said was unreasonable was that the fact that I don't care, because you want me to say that men are better suited for the position that women are because of this data that you have.
No, I didn't want you to say that.
That's why you said that I was unreasonable.
That your thinking when it comes to this core thing is not based on logic, but rather it's based on holding doggedly to a position. Conversely, when you showed me some reason, you said something that I had to acknowledge made perfect sense. You said they lowered the height standard because the height of beat cops doesn't matter in San Francisco. And I tend to agree that it probably doesn't. Although I would say if I was running the society, I think larger, more physically imposing police officer are highly more likely to prevent certain situations, because I can assure you that people tend to act more kindly to men who are bigger than men who are smaller.
And I think you're right about that part. But again, it's a distant shore from what we started off discussing.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that it's a conversation, and we don't have to stick doggedly to the thing is,
I believe that part of your reason for wanting, you needed a foil. And so you needed someone, you know what a foil is. You're a very intelligent person.
Unless you're talking about the math.
No, you needed someone to bounce your ideas off of. And as I said, I respect your perceptions about and your ideas about things. It's just that I don't agree with you.
We know you don't agree. We know that. We know that.
And I didn't come here to replicate the Jerry Springer show.
I don't think it's Jerry Springer. I think that the truth is what people get to hear from you is extremely valuable in disagreeing. And I think we can have active disagreement without it being Jerry Springer.
And be very civil, as I said to you before I came in.
And you've not called me a name or spit on me and
or thrown my chair at you.
Right. But the truth is your position needs to be represented. And in fact, I think that we all get to learn something when you say things, for example, like the height thing. Because to be honest with you, I personally would think they should be taller. But I also agree with you that people shouldn't be excluded from trying to do the job if the height is not critical.
Well, and also going back to using your metaphor of walking through, and I understand the position. I understand the whole idea of making sure that people react in certain ways that they feel less likely to attack someone because there is a very strong, big person standing by them. I still say that even if that person is shorter, but they are highly skilled in martial arts, let alone packing, they can be a good person to have as a guard.
Do you believe that men should lead America, i.e., like the office of president should be exclusively male? Not that women should be barred to run, but men should win? Or do you believe it can be anybody?
I believe it could be anybody who's qualified, because for the longest we didn't have anybody black, did we?
We still haven't had anybody black.
Well, actually, we haven't.
We haven't had one person black run America.
Well, that's, again, we're getting into your perceptions of things.
One black person run America.
All right.
That guy was dangerous.
Okay.
There's a few questions for her.
Okay.
So a Pleasant VP said, Dr. Williams, you mentioned that I am what I appear to be, but from the liberals we hear I am more than my appearance. Do you believe that it's reasonable to judge a person accordingly by their appearance, man and woman?
To judge them by their appearance? No. I think, although I will say this, I think people present to you the image that they want you to see.
Okay. Fair. We have Harris said, does the professor believe in the myth of the wage gap? Furthermore, why is total equality such an important goal for feminists when it's arbitrary and antithetical to biology?
Do I believe in the, well, again, these are like loaded questions. The myth of the wage gap. The wage gap is not a myth, it's a reality. And what was the second part of the question?
Why is total equality such an important goal for feminists?
It should be an important goal for everyone. And again, it depends on what we're talking about in terms of equality. What are we talking about? Are we talking about being able to get a loan to buy a house in any neighborhood? Are we talking about being able to get a job? What are we talking about?
Do you think today males and females have equality, like under the law?
No, not really. I mean, if you have the law, but then there's the way the law is practiced.
What would be an example today of a male and a female having a different experience under the law?
Hiring in certain professions, hiring in certain jobs.
Was hiring really, like, hiring has more always been discretion, right? Like, for example, me I've been a CEO of several companies, and when I look at someone, I might simply disqualify them under the, I don't think you'll blend in with our culture, whatever our culture may be, which could constitute discrimination and
it depends.
All kinds of things. But
I've been a manager, and I've been an HR person also, and I recognize that there is culture. And it does not necessarily have to do with race.
Right. And can the government, like, see, as you've rightly identified me not as a leftist, but I'm also not on the far right. I think these people are just as insane. I think the left and right are equally nutty buddies.
It depends on who you're talking about.
But one thing I'm sure of as a person who's built a company from nothing, one who came out of poverty, built a company from nothing, invested all of my money, risking myself being in poverty. And then the government comes in and tells me whom I can hire. Well, where were you when I was investing my last penny? Where were you other than to show up taxing me when I didn't have any profits?
Well, I grew up in a family-owned business. All right. So I understand about hiring, profit margins, financial statements.
And the government knows nothing about that.
And I think one of the things that the government, and then whoever the government is, I think one of the things that has been happening, or was happening up until the time that we had the EEOC and all of these other alphabet agencies that were looking at issues related to desegregating the country and in all of its areas, is disparate treatment. I mean, you get a situation like, I can't think of his first name, but Flores, the coach, who was interviewed for a job under the Rooney Rule when they'd already picked someone for the position. I mean, it's so, and that was such a flagrant, I mean, it was really outrageous. So if there hadn't been this sort of government interference, if you will, in just ordinary jobs,
Yes.
you'd have a lot worse situation. I can remember my first job I had my first job as a librarian in a city, had almost a year's experience, went to the second job when my husband's job changed and to be hired. And I was hired instead of being hired on the second step, I was hired on the first step again. And the woman at that time told me, well, either take it or leave it. So I said, okay, I'll take it because I wanted the job.
Sure.
Okay, later on, I'm a manager in the same system. The young woman working for me, we were hired at the same time. At this point, she's working for me.
Yes.
Turned out she was hired on the second step, and she was just out of library school.
Yes.
So
it's probably discrimination.
It was good. But my point is, what those rules that we look at now, when you say the government comes in and tells me who to hire, it's to try to ameliorate situations like that. It can't erase them because no, and you see it all the time.
Yes.
But the point is, it has to be people do it with a lot less, depending on the geographical area. They do it with a lot less openness now than they used to.
I think I understand the sentiment of what you don't like about it. And I think it's reasonable. My challenge, no, I really do. I think it's reasonable. But the thing that challenges me is that what's reliable is not what the government can come and do within a private business. That is extremely unreliable. Having run many private businesses, I know what the government can do within my business, very unreliable. You've seen a lot of examples in the media, the way Donald Trump ran some of his private companies and even his real estate holdings and whom he would let occupy it and not occupy it. But if you look at the African American, when desegregation occurred, the per capita income of the average Black family declined. And a lot of other meaningful metrics among Blacks went down the toilet. And illegitimacy being one of those things that increased after that, with more Blacks living on the state. But I say that to say this. Yes, in the short term, there's pain. When you go into a job and they discriminate against you for whatever reason, whether it's gender, race, you got a limp and a lazy eye, who knows what it is. That drives you to create for self. And yes, there have been many instances where Black folks have gone to create for self, but under segregation, where they were literally forced to, Black communities thrived, and you had the Black upper class living among the Black lower class. And there have been many studies that point out that children who get to see the full spectrum of income in their neighborhood are more ambitious and they achieve more. And further, it is peculiar that one should want to work somewhere where you're not wanted. Like, that's one thing I thank my grandmother for teaching me, which is, if they don't want you there, go create your own or go find someone who wants you there.
And that's an easy response, but it's not one.
No, it's hard. It's hard to create your own business.
Not only is it hard to create your own business, it's also hard to find a place where they want you. I mean, the thing is, if you are only going to work where people want you, you will probably not be working very much.
Or you could create your own business.
If you have the capital to do that. Because if you have a situation, though, in which, I mean, do you understand or do you appreciate or believe in redlining?
On the real estate side, or the voting side of things?
No, on real estate, which is often tied to voting. But the point is this. If you don't have the equity, if you live in a neighborhood that's been redlined and you don't have the equity in your house, for example, or in your property, because you haven't been able to own property to borrow from it and build a business, you're just stuck where you are. And the thing is, and I know the whole argument about pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, my father barely finished high school. He barely finished junior high. Actually, my mother barely finished high school, but they ran a very successful business. Made sure that I got a good education, and made sure that our grandchildren, their grandchildren got good educations. Because that was how they struggled. But it was very costly, and it was very hard for them. And my father couldn't get bank loans. I mean, he had to rely upon investors for his business. And it worked out. And it worked out. But the point is, that is not a common happening. That is,
It happened all the time under segregation.
not all the time, because
under segregation, blacks were wealthier then than they are today.
There were fewer
in
blacks.
2022. I'm talking about per capita.
That may have been the case for some people, but I think that's one of those conservative myths that's out there.
No, that's not a myth.
No,
There's data. The per capita income of African Americans, meaning what the average family had in terms of income, is higher under segregation than it is today. That's not a myth. And mind you, I went to Berkeley, which is like a Marxist university.
No, it's not a Marxist university.
Marxist university.
This is when you tell me that you're not from a conservative.
No, those people are insane. No, the right is extremely insane. And I'll tell you why. Number one, they say that they believe in family, which they really do not. Number two, they have religion, and all of their religious ideals don't add up. They don't live by anything you might find in the Bible. Number three, the conservatives spend as poorly as the leftists when they're in government. And number four, they purport that they're moral, but all they do is go to war with other nations, namely nations that can't defend themselves, and destroy them, and then push the money up to the people at the top. But ironically, the left does the same thing when they're in office. Like, for example, Barack Obama, whom I find disgusting because he was wearing my face as a black man, and people called him the first black president. And one thing he's directly responsible for is in Libya today, they have open slave markets where they sell black Africans into enslavement. And Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney has been a black woman, a black congresswoman. She's been there and verified this. And this is because he went there and destroyed a nation that had nothing to do with us. And these are the kind of things on the left and the right that are both vile.
Okay. I just don't feel like arguing with you about this.
No, we're
because
not
again, no, we are, because, we can go on about, many of these issues are interpretations and perspective. And it's hard to argue when you have respect for other people's perspectives. It's hard to argue with them.
Well, I don't consider it arguing. I look at it as, and one, mostly I'm identifying what I'm doing, what I have in process, right? Like what I'm building, what I'm actually doing.
And I think what you're doing is very good. I like the fact that you have your business and that you are, it sounds like you are mentoring other young men, and I guess some young women, I'm not sure,
And the reason I think these conversations are important, because, like, for example, I think we agree on like certain things, like, for example, like stereotypes around black women, right? Which certainly exist. In fact, I'll tell you how strong they are. My first name is Marquette. In the rare instances when I have had to send in a job application, I was anxious because I felt like they might think I was a black woman instead of a black man. And I feel like it's even more disadvantageous than being a black man, because they're viewed as unruly, disagreeable, aggressive, impolite, poorly spoken. And so I agree that those stereotypes are out there. And when I ask myself, what is there to do to mitigate the situation? I look at it as two sides. I could work on the side of the employer. Hey, stop doing this. Or, hey, believe black women are this. Trying to control others outside of us. Or I can work on the side of the black woman with training, because many of them aren't that way. But I can tell you, I've lived in many ghettos. I grew up in a ghetto. My family was ghetto. I taught in Baltimore City. I lived in Southside Chicago, and I can go on and on in the black ghettos that I've been in. And the stereotype is there. It is there. So what
all stereotypes have some basis in truth.
And it's not only black women, it's black men as well are in disrepair. And so what I would rather do is work with them and go through the training of like, hey, this is how you conduct yourself as a proud black person. Like, I'm not going to try to get other people to think differently of you. I'm trying to get you to think differently of you.
And that's what your training program is doing.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. I really do.
Let me ask you, and I've never called myself a black feminist, but I might start after today. But tell me what you think of this, because this has always been an issue for me that I would consider a black feminist issue. It burns me up when I see black women wearing their hair like white women. I find that to be a very clear sign of self-hatred. And I think that any struggle on behalf of a people should be first to let you know who you are and value yourself. And I feel like every time I see that, it's a clear indication that black women don't value themselves.
You know, one of the things that I think would be good for you to consider is that it's part of agency. It's part of empowerment. Women wear their hair the way they want to wear their hair. I've gone through, you know, I'm old enough to have gone through whole stages. I've worn giant naturals. I won very
I saw
short
that,
naturals.
by the way.
Yeah, did
So,
you?
yeah, I did. I did.
I've won, I've won my hair all kinds of ways. And that's because that's how I want to do it. There was a time when I would get really upset when I saw Black men with white women.
Oh,
all right.
You about to be mad in 2022.
Yeah.
You about to be mad.
Yeah. But, you know, because I saw so many sisters who really started to become very aggressive and very angry about what they were seeing as the best Black men married to or going with or hooked up with white women. Okay. So that was an issue that said, there's a guy who doesn't like himself, there is a guy who is filled with self-hatred, who basically has traded off any semblance of racial identity for this white woman who is being held up as the ideal for him to seek. You know, fast forward, now we see people with, you know, we see all kinds of interracial relationships. And I think when you see more Black women in interracial relationships, I think there is a sort of not only because there are so many children who are biracial now.
It's a lot
of children. I have a lot of kids in my class who are, and they bring a very interesting and perspective to what's going on because they hear both sides of they've had both sides of the experience and of listening. But that is one of the things that's where my attitude has evolved. And I think when you start looking at how Black women see themselves, that is also an evolution. We feel free to look the way we want to look. I mean, my women in my generation 40 years ago dyed their hair.
What do you mean?
Yeah, they dyed. They would not wear their hair white.
You're saying
because
sure.
because there is this big strong youth culture.
It's still, you know, persistent.
It's persistent. But the thing is, I like wearing my hair white, and I will wear my hair white. You know, and I will wear my hair the way I want to wear my hair because I have the agency to do it.
You do.
And you be married to whoever you want to be married to or be with or whatever, because that is your agency to do that.
I think they could signify the same things, but they're different behaviors, right?
Oh, sure.
So one is clear self-denial, like the self as an individual, it's modifying the self to take on the racial features of another group.
You know, that was an argument that when Madam C.J. Walker came out with her hair products, that was one of the arguments. They say, oh, you're trying to make Black women look like white women. No, I'm trying to help Black women look the best that they feel that they want to look, the way they want to look, the best the way they want to look. And for that reason, even though she was a philanthropist, a newspaper writer, owner, a businesswoman, she owned banks and whatever, what has lasted is her attention to the one thing one of two things that basically stereotyped Black women, that held Black women back from seeing the beauty that they had. And that was what was going on with their hair. Okay. So she basically freed Black women from that so they could look however they wanted to look. And that evolved.
And you talked about interpretations. That is an interpretation. One thing, shout out to Madam C.J. Walker, because I always promote prosperity, business, doing for self. And I didn't know she owned banks. That's real power.
Yeah, she did.
Especially in that time. If she did all of that in 2022, that would still be power.
She had a savings bank. She had a savings bank that was very powerful.
So she is astronomical in her achievement for anyone. She could have been a white man. That's a lot of achievement.
That's right.
So shout out to her. I'm certain that women hear what you said and they agree. Across the board. They're probably like 99.9%. Of Black women probably agree with that. One thing that I've not observed in the white woman is wearing her hair in a way that emulates the black woman.
You've never seen Sharon Stone wear the beads and the braids in her hair? You haven't seen these women these actresses with beads and braids?
To give you an example, if I were to randomly select 100 black women, I would bet my life and the life of my offspring that 70% or more will have their hair straight and permed or something that looks closer to European hair than African hair. If I took 100 white women, you might not even find 10 who have their hair looking closer to African hair than European hair.
Okay, so when you're looking at African hair, you're looking at hair that is kinky. And is it kinky and short? Or is it kinky and long?
So what is
African hair?
That's
look
a good
like
question.
To you?
And I don't want to get too granular, because the difference between myself and an academic is that an academic stays in the ivory tower. And if they have knowledge, it doesn't benefit many people. What we're doing here is really getting to the practical things where we can take some action. So I don't want to get too granular, but if you look at it anthropologically, there are 3 racial categories: Negroid, Mongoloid, Caucasoid. However people might say it's passe, these are still the 3 categories. Within the Negroid category, there is significant variation, not only in nose bridge width, also in the shape of the eye and the complexion and the grade of the hair. But the dominant within the Negroid type is the kinky, tightly curled hair.
But suppose women don't want to wear their hair that way, or they want to wear their hair. Suppose they're black and they have straight hair.
Well,
then what do they do?
In all of my
what should they do?
In all of my time on the planet Earth and in all of my extensive travels throughout the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, I've yet to meet a black woman who had her hair growing out of her head straight. They may exist. I'm sure they do.
Of course they do.
But
just walk across the campus and you'll see it.
But we're talking about a very rare type of black woman. And I agree with you that the inclination of the females to beautify. And that's why one of the reasons men appreciate women is their inclination to beautify. However, for the woman of African ancestry, there is a self-hatred that has been taken on, not that she created, but has been victim of. And this has caused her to emulate the racial features of other races. And I'll give you an example. Even in Kenya, even in West Africa, you have women using skin lightening creams. And in America, you have Lil' Kim, who used to be a rapper. I don't know if you're familiar with her. You have Sammy Sosa, used to be a baseball player. They use these creams to bleach their skin. It's
Michael Jackson.
Well, he claimed that was a disease. I don't know. He claimed it was vitiligo. I don't know.
Well, he did have vitiligo, but he also used skin lightening. He did a lot of plastic surgery and
Clearly.
A lot of other things too.
Yeah. So I say that to say this. Yes, everyone has agency to choose how they look. But the sad reality, and I know this as a businessman, as a capitalist, average people are not making decisions. They think they're making decisions. Really, someone like me made their decision for them. And what I mean by that,
this is true,
is when I make a product, I design what's called a user experience. You click this and you click that, then you feel this way. It's kind of like a casino in your hand. You feel this way and it reinforces certain behaviors. So as Vladimir Ilyich Plekhanov-Lenin said, history is created by a directive minority. And black women may think that they're using agency, but really they're doing what they've been conditioned to do, which is to emulate the dominant culture.
You know, I think you're being very judgmental, and I think you're unreasonably judgmental.
I am judgmental, but I feel like I'm reasonable.
No, you're unreasonably judgmental because you are extrapolating your own personal biases against women who look a certain way.
Which way?
With straightened hair.
Oh,
because
yeah, sure.
your assumption is that there is self-hatred. It's like my assumption is when I see a black guy with a white woman that he's filled with he doesn't like black women. He had a bad experience with his mother.
Yeah.
He had a bad experience with his mother or his auntie or somebody. So therefore his significant other is a white person. That is not a good, that's not a basic attitude. It's a wrong idea because you love the one you're with. The simple fact is you are with the person that you love.
I don't think that's a simple fact.
No, I think it is. I think it is.
Consider like a Tiger Woods, for example. Well, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dating white women. I'm not saying there's anything
Tiger
wrong.
Woods' mother was Vietnamese.
Correct.
All right. So the thing is, my point is, you can't say what's in another person's mind. You can make assumptions about that based on your own position, your own perspective on things. But you can't, that's not even important. It's not even important.
Do you think that if Africans had never contacted Europeans or vice versa, meaning Africans were in Africa untouched by European culture or influence, when African women were to modify their hair and appearance, do you think they would even come up with the idea to straighten the hair?
I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't realize that frying developed in Africa until I was reading a book on African
cooking
process. Yeah, and because the first thing that came to my mind was, what did they use for oil? Well, they used coconut oil, and since there was a major source of iron ore, they had all kinds of cooking pots and things like that. So who knows, if they had that kind of heat, somebody might have discovered putting heat on their hair straightened it.
And the only reason I ask that is because when you look at scholars and the folks in the African historiography, when you're looking at a Dr. Ivan von Sertima, Sheikh Anta Diop, or any of these major scholars whom we respect, and you look at the art and artifacts, none of it depicts African women with straightened hair.
Have you ever looked at the art? Taking into account that Egypt is actually in Africa, have you looked at some of the Egyptian drawings? They have straight hair.
Firstly, if you look at the geography of where Egypt
is in Africa.
Correct.
Egypt is in Africa.
Egypt is in Africa. And I agree with you that this was an African civilization.
Right.
This is also one of the civilizations in Africa that received very early contact with non-blacks.
That's right, with the Greeks and the
conquered by the Assyrians, the Greeks, and it goes on and on. It goes on and on. So it doesn't quite align with my pre-European contact thesis.
Well, is that a problem? Why does it mean that Black women hate themselves if they're straightening their hair or wearing their certain hairstyle? Okay. Yeah, I'm checking my clock. Okay. Why is that a problem for women who are looking a certain way, Black women looking a certain way, and not a problem for Black men who marry white women or have contact with a
That's a good
white
question.
Women? Why is that?
I want to make sure that I understand the question before I start answering. So you're saying, why is Black women, or excuse me, why is it Black women straightening their hair or bleaching their skin?
And the two don't necessarily go together, by the way.
Sure, not everyone.
Yeah.
Bleaching their skin is a relatively less common thing for the time being. So why is Black men dating white women and marrying them not as bad? Is that what you're asking me?
Well, why is there a distinction between the two? Why does one indicate self-hatred and the other one doesn't? It's just that.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So I think in both cases, they can be signifiers of self-hatred.
On the other hand, in both cases, they cannot be signifiers of self-hatred.
That's correct.
Yeah, let's leave it at that and talk about something else.
Okay, because I thought you were asking me. All right.
Yeah,
okay.
No, you brought it up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you brought it up. Yeah.
What's your other item?
Well, your other question was excesses of feminism, Black feminism, any cost to heterosexual males.
Okay. What
do you consider excesses?
Real quick, what did you think of that question when you read
it?
Initially?
I didn't know what I thought of it.
Okay.
Again, it's kind of like a loaded question. The person who wrote it and said, what's the myth of the pay gap? Was
it that bad?
Yeah,
it was.
It is kind of like,
so
when did you stop beating your wife?
Sure. Excesses of feminism / Black feminism. One, I can't really identify any excesses of Black feminism. But when I say excesses of feminism, as I stated earlier, I find that it drives very deep into misandry, and the feminist movement is largely gender feminist. And the way this is manifests itself is today you have a lot of programs to forward and advance females. Like, for example, if you look at the schooling system, you find that universities are now populated kind of like 55% female and then 45% male. And you still.
Why do you think that is?
I know that there are multiple reasons. One is that actually the inherent qualities of the female actually make her better at school as it's currently set up. And this starts very early on.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah. So there's that. Then secondly, most teachers in early education, so kinder or K through 6, are females, and that's another factor in it.
And that's a problem too. I'd like to see many more male teachers, especially at the elementary level.
It gets spooky down there. So those are 2 factors. And then the third factor is there's actually significant policy initiatives and money being pushed into efforts to elevate females within certain disciplines and in the schooling system in general. And it has worked. But I don't think that it's money well invested or well guided, because it's often guiding females out of things that they're more naturally gravitating to. So,
Like, for example,
women are less inclined to go into mathematics and hard sciences. Further, females are less inclined to pursue being a physician as opposed to being a nurse. And I think that there are biological imperatives there, which I have a good friend of mine who's a female, went to Ann Arbor, and she was saying, I want to be a surgeon, but it requires so much time that I can't be a mother and a surgeon at the same time. And in my head, I was thinking, thank God, because I don't want to get a surgery from someone who was not like really doing all they could do. Because if you have meat cut open, I want the person who put in the extra hours.
There's definitely a push to get more women and girls, and girls especially, into STEM.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely a push for that. And I think it's a fair push, because they need both genders. And it isn't one at the expense of the other. I think they need both genders to be involved. And we still are at a point, and sometimes when I talk to high school girls in high school, one of the things that's still disturbing is that many of them still don't have a sense of their own importance, of how life is important for them, to look ahead for careers and whatever. Careers that are fulfilling for them as women, or for them as society. It's like I always tell my students, society needs you to be educated. I don't care what color you are, what gender you are. We need more educated people in society, because we need people to be able to make rational decisions about things, to have civil conversations about things, and do problem solving. And you can't do that if you don't get an education, quite frankly.
I agree with you there. And there's a book that I read called The War on Boys. I want to say it was written by Valerie Hoff Summers, I think, is the author of that book. It's called The War on Boys. And that was kind of one of the works that would lead into the question that I asked. I agree with you in that we all need to be educated, get a proper education.
I think there's a war on Black boys. I think there's a war on certain boys. I don't think there's a war on all boys. And I think if you really look at some of the things that are happening, the high expulsion rates, the high dropout rates, that's where the war is on boys of color, and actually on girls of color, because that's one of the indicators of both when we talk about intersectionality, when all of these discriminations come together, one of the things that we see is that Black girls are twice as likely to be expelled from school for certain infractions as white girls are. And Black boys are, about 3 or 4 times as likely to be expelled for infractions. You can go to any elementary school now and, like, on, say, Tuesday or Wednesday morning, walk into the office and you'll see 2 to 1, you'll see 2 or 3 Black boys sitting in the office waiting to see the principal.
I think that date is correct. Having been a teacher and having taken a master's in education, I think the date, and even before that, I was reading into this. I think the first book I read on this was by Juanza Kunjufu. And I think this stuff is fascinating. For me, it goes back to family, and I'll tell you why. But I agree with you. And one of the things you didn't identify that I think is part of the suffering that's going on is the designation of Black boys in particular under ADHD, ADD, emotionally disturbed, and all of these things.
By 4th grade, they are at a distinct disadvantage to actually make it through high school.
I think, well, that's what the data is saying, but I think they were at a disadvantage when they were born into a given family that was broken.
Could be.
And the culture is in disrepair. And
that didn't help.
Right. So yeah, I think we agree there. Now the question of how to repair such a thing, for example, this is one of the things that troubled me. Now, and I don't want to get into politics because no one wants to hear about politics, but one thing I'll say as a person who's been an educator and a capitalist is this. One thing I liked about Trump's education plan. Now, granted, Trump doesn't know anything about education, nor does the woman he put as the head of education, had no background in education, but he does know about business, and business can make a few inferences. And what he did was unique. It allowed Black people a unique opportunity. He said, we'll give you a voucher, which is money that you can use to go to any school that you want to go to. And so we'll finance your option. Now, one thing I had the opportunity to do is be around a lot of Black nationalists, whether we're talking about the Nation of Islam, the Farrakhan types, or we're talking about the Dr. Umar Johnson types, all these guys, none of whom are businessmen, and they should be if they want to build anything. But for the first time, Black people had the option to actually create a Black private school funded by government dollars where you could hire the Black principal, the Black teacher, teach the Black curriculum, but we didn't want to do it. And I found that to be disappointing and despicable.
Actually, that's not exactly true. My husband and I actually ran a charter school at one point.
And a Black charter school, or it was a charter school?
It was a charter school that had mainly Black students in it. And because these were students who had been pushed out of school for various reasons. The woman who I did my dissertation about, Charlie Mae Knight, Dr. Charlie Mae Knight, had founded a couple of charter schools and was working. She was the superintendent of the East Palo Alto School District, which was heavily Black.
Yep.
And did a lot to improve it, and ran into all kinds of roadblocks, both local and federal, doing it. She was with another group that tried after Katrina to get a couple of charter schools going in the New Orleans area. So there were Blacks who were very active. I knew several people over time because of organizations and whatever who were involved in it. The voucher system had its good points to it, I admit, but there were some tricky pieces to it also, because within that business model, you had a lot of people who, like, I can't even think of her name now, the woman who was the Secretary of Education. What?
I think was it Betsy Davos?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
DeVos. She wasn't doing anything anyways.
No, she wasn't, except messing stuff up. DeVos, I think was her name. But anyway, the point is, you had a lot of people who were opportunists who took advantage, and they were not providing a good education. And also, it's one thing to offer people a voucher. It's another thing to get them to the school. When you had—
What do you mean, like actual bus transportation?
Just transportation. There were some, for example, there was one really excellent school that I knew of. It was started by a minister who brought his sister, who was a teacher. He brought her in to be principal. The school was doing extremely well because he was very organized. He knew how to run things, and it was in the neighborhood, so kids could walk there.
Yes.
There are charter schools in Las Vegas that are the same way. That kids, they're in the neighborhood. Those, they can walk there, and they are accepting of them. But in some areas, not all areas, I don't want to make a blanket stereotype. In some areas, children with a voucher were not welcome. They weren't welcome into the place. It goes back to something you said earlier, that was more common than not. It goes back to something you said earlier about, why do you want to go where people don't want you?
Correct.
Okay, so that was the situation that a lot of families found themselves in with this so-called voucher. If you have that kind of money available, either through private enterprise or through government subsidies, then why not improve the schools that are in the neighborhood? See, that's kind of the tension there. So while I think I really support charter schools. I support the idea of charter schools. I never mentioned
charter schools.
Okay, no. Well, vouchers usually went to charter schools. I like that idea a lot, and I think it's very important.
Fair enough.
So there's some questions that we're going to get to. What has the feminist movement done for Black women when we have Breonna Taylor or Sandra Bland getting killed? White feminists are oddly quiet.
Well, I don't think radical feminists, white feminists have been quiet, and I know Black feminists have not been quiet. If you look at those marches I mean, Black Lives Matter was started by two Black women, 2 or 3 Black women.
Both homosexual.
Well, regardless.
I'm just saying, to my point, remember when I was saying that? Like, you're acting like it's not real.
No, I didn't say it wasn't real. I simply said it wasn't important in terms of, and it wasn't a blanket description that was accurate about Black feminists.
Correct. I was just talking about feminism, contemporary feminism in general.
Yeah, but why mention it if it's not important?
Oh, no, it's extremely important.
No, but what I'm saying is, why did you throw that in? And we're answering the question
because
about what Black feminists have done. I mentioned what have they done in the light of the deaths of Breonna Taylor and the other women, and I mentioned how Black Lives Matter started, and you said, oh, by the way, both of them were homosexuals.
Yes.
But the point is, that is when you say that, this is how it comes across. It is a way of denigrating the effort. They're just homosexuals.
Oh, no, that's not what I meant.
Well,
so
that may not be what you meant, but that's how it came across.
I'll clarify for everyone watching as well. Earlier, I had said that a lot of contemporary feminists are gender feminists, and they're often homosexual, and they seek to marginalize heterosexual males. They even call us by strange names like cisgender males. And I don't disagree with that, but I don't disagree with that, Marquette. I really don't. But the point is, that's not the majority of them. I'm not saying it is, but it's the loudest one. The loudest, and that's the most important thing in this era.
And maybe the loudest, and it's like when you talk about not being a right winger.
Right.
The loudest people, however, frequently are, and they're the ones who give everybody else, including people who are just basically conservative, who may be financially conservative, financially, but they may even be socially moderate.
The right wings, they're nuts. I mean, you got Rush Limbaugh, you got the kid who's blonde. He's actually purports to be homosexual. He considers himself a right winger. You got the Jewish kid. I can't remember his name. I'm sure someone in the comments will speak on him. The blonde kid who claims to be a conservative homosexual kid.
Okay, but the point is, I'm trying to answer this person's question, and I think part of it is empowering women to take control. The Breonna Taylor situation was a tragedy, and there have been marches and there have been pushes for Black feminists are very active in this.
Was that a girl that was killed by a police officer? I'm not even. There's been so many.
Breonna Taylor was the one who, with her boyfriend, was. Let's see, how did it happen? 2 undercover policemen were searching for a drug dealer, and they found his address was apparently her address because he had been either a former resident or a former associate of hers. So they went in with guns blazing. Her current boyfriend opened the door and wanted to know what was going on. He thought there was a home invasion.
Fair enough.
And they shot him and shot up the house and killed Breonna Taylor.
Was she a post office worker? I don't know why
she was a medical worker.
She was a medical worker. Yeah, she was EMT.
Yeah. Right. Okay,
I
remember.
EMT, yeah.
Now that's a tragedy. And one thing I will say, another thing, the right, they're very pro-police, very obsessively pro-police. I'm not pro-police. I'm pro-police, your own neighborhood,
Community. I'm very much a supporter of community policing.
Right. And to me, that's real democracy when you have them within the neighborhood. They actually know the people in it. And that whole situation sounds crazy. So the conclusion is that they were there. They were there, even though the caller might not be aware.
That's right.
Fair enough.
Okay, next question. Dr. Williams, all due respect, has feminism negatively or positively affected the modern Black woman in regards to dating, marriage, and the nuclear family?
Which feminism are we talking about? Are we talking about white feminism or Black feminism?
That's
Black feminist thought. Well, I think if you're talking about Black feminism, let me take the positive first. I think it has had an effect in terms of helping Black women feel empowered to control their own lives, to support themselves, to reach out to support their families, and to advocate for themselves. One of the characteristics that white feminism, or what Angela Davis called bourgeois feminism, is that they saw the roles of white women as being essential and as being a blanket panacea for all women. The fact that Black women have a different experience may not be considered, or even, I mean, we're invisible in that movement. That's why Black feminist thought sort of came into being, because we have these other issues. Race and gender are both, again, we're talking about intersections. We are at the intersections of race, gender, and class. And not all, we're not trying to get the corner corporate office or necessarily the seat at the corporate table. We want those things, but we have other things that are important to us as well that may not be recognized by by white feminists.
Do you think the nuclear family is important for the Black woman?
I think the nuclear family is important for everyone. Definitely. I think the nuclear family, I think you need two parents to raise kids. We raised 3 children. We lost 1. And I think the simple fact is, given when I look back on it, it was, I don't know how I would have done it without my husband. And he always says, I don't know how I would have done it without my wife. Seriously, it does take 2 people. If you really want to, I mean, I know that people usually, when you say that, there will be somebody in the audience who says, well, my mom raised me by myself. And I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of it. And I'm just, and that's,
and I'm fantastic.
And that's not saying anything negative about you, about your mom, or anything like that. She, if you asked her, if it was hard, if she would have preferred another way, she probably would say, I certainly would have preferred,
for sure,
some other way.
Okay, Jabrizzi, he said, is the slut walk under the feminist movement?
Are you familiar with that?
I've heard that. What is it exactly? I have heard it, but I've never heard the definition of it. What is it?
As practiced in America, it was a collection of women who gathered in the United States to march down the boulevard with their breast out, wearing thongs
yes,
under the idea of sexual liberation.
Yeah, right. That the same group that probably burned bras, right?
And wore vaginas on their head. Yes.
That. Well, the vagina hats were a different.
Oh, right. Okay,
sure. That was with in protest of Donald Trump.
Yes.
So is that part of the feminist movement?
Is one aspect of the feminist movement. Yeah. I mean, you have to understand, it's not a monolithic group. I mean, I think that's the part that I really need to state here. Feminism, it is not a monolithic group. You have your white feminists and you have your Black feminists, and then you have subgroups in each group. Okay, so.
Okay, we have Edward. He just has a statement. He said, feminism promotes equality of outcome, which is dangerous in all forms. Women on average cooperate while men compete. Feminism isn't fighting for women to be roofers, plumbers, longshoremen, etc. Most women are risk adverse. Thanks for the ISM.
That's not true. If you look at the construction trades here in Las Vegas, there's a very big move to get women involved. The head of the welders? No. The group that makes, I can't think of it. The group, there is a Black woman who heads up the union. There is a very big push among the unions to get women into the construction trades. So that's not really true.
I have no clue. I've not been in construction. I don't want to be in construction.
No, I pay particular attention because I grew up in a small business family and my father was a building contractor.
One thing I look at, a lot of struggles to be are economic focused.
Yes, they are.
And sometimes I wish some of them were more economic focused. Like, for example, when Black folks were accusing Donald Trump of being a racist, which he might be. But I would say, well, how's that make him any different from any president we've ever had? One thing I really liked about his presidency was they had the lowest unemployment for Black people ever. And to me, that was huge because I remember when I was trying to get a job, I had a lot of trouble.
I don't want to get into politics because I did not like Donald Trump. And I think he was the worst thing that ever happened to
as a person
to the country.
I'm just talking about his policies.
No, his policies, such as they were. But again, I didn't come here to talk about Donald Trump.
I wasn't talking about Donald Trump or policy. Or excuse me, I wasn't talking about Donald Trump or politics.
Okay.
I wasn't. I said.
You were just saying how great he was.
No, if you were listening to me, I started off, I said a lot of movements are about economics, and some I wish were more about economics. That's what I said.
That was your theme, right?
And then I said Donald Trump, people call him racist, and he very well may have been, just like all the other presidents. But what I liked was the low unemployment among Black people, coming back to the economic thing. And Black people's biggest issue historically has been economic. Every time you look at who's the first hired or last hired, first fired, or who has the lowest average income among the racial groups, Black people are always at the bottom.
Right.
So economics should be the number one thing.
Right. But I think you can use another example other than Donald Trump. And that's my point. And I think for me, when you start mentioning Donald Trump, my eyes glaze over.
That's why I believe in male leadership, because if you, that's why, because you're being emotional, and it's at the expense.
I'm being emotional.
Yes, it's at the expense of the topic, and I'll tell you why.
You are such a misogynist. No. My goodness gracious.
So you're saying because I said you're emotional, I hate women?
No, that's because
a big jump.
No, that's because that is exactly what men say when women disagree with them. Oh, you're just being emotional.
No, I didn't say because you disagree. You've been disagreeing the whole time. But I said that because when you said I can use a different example other than Donald Trump is irrelevant. He
really is.
He is irrelevant.
He really is. And I agree with you on the economic standpoint, because that's, again, I grew up in a family-owned business. Yeah. I have owned businesses myself. I have worked in business. I've worked in corporate America. I totally agree with you on that. Just don't use him as an example.
The reason that, not him as an individual, but the reason that as a symbol is important is because we as a people, both Black people and humankind, must be able to be rational and not be filled with hatred. I think it's ironic you accuse me of having a hatred of women, which is completely unfounded.
Well, it's not, when you interpret misogyny, it's a hatred of women.
I don't interpret. I use the definition in the dictionary.
Well, that's not the way it's often practiced. Misogyny is it's an attitude about women which denigrates women.
I'm not talking to women. I'm talking to you as an individual, and you're talking to me as an individual. And I think that that's one of the issues, is that if we don't teach logic in schools to both male and female, then
women are going to be more illogic than men.
No, I wish, because I just said male and female.
Okay.
You see, if males had not already failed, the society wouldn't be in disrepair. If men had done a great job, it just wouldn't make any sense. Both have failed. But if I say something that's in disagreement with you, that doesn't mean I hate women. That might mean I just disagree with you.
No, it's a term that you use, though. Now you're being emotional.
That was an emotional reaction that you had to Donald Trump, and
I think your
and I'm not even a fan, by the way.
I think your reaction when you talk about my reaction is emotional. But my point is, again, I like this discussion about feminism and trying to help people understand, at least my understanding of this particular type of feminism, Black feminist thought. That is what I came to talk about, and that's what I enjoy discussing.
Okay, you want to hit us with that next question?
Yeah. So we have Marcus. He said, using your logic, Dr. Williams, we should be able to use skin lightening products under the guise of complexion agency, right? I should be able to have any complexion I want.
If that's what you want to do, sure.
We have Jabrizzi. He just has another statement. He says, seems like the conversation of feminism today isn't about making things equal. It's more about lowering the standard of family, standard of thinking, standard of protection, standard of character.
Well, that's probably, again, if that's their perspective, then that's how they see it. It's not. I mean, the whole idea is to empower women to make those kinds of decisions for their families in conjunction with the spouse if they have it, or singularly if they don't have it, so that the quality of life for their families goes up, so they can get jobs that pay fairly, so they can have terms of their positions that pay fairly, so they can have childcare, so they can get into the economic force.
Do you have anything to say?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We have a Plus MVP says, so if I dress as a scantily clad woman and want men of God, should I tell men to change religion or accept me as I am?
I'm sorry, what was that question? I mean, maybe that's for Marquette. That must be for Marquette. I don't understand.
Oh, okay.
So if I change, what was that?
Marquette, do you want to read it?
If I dress as a scantily clad woman and want men of God, should I tell them to change religion or accept me as I am? It's like a riddle almost.
It does,
It's
isn't
like a
it?
riddle.
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that one. Maybe
Nav's like,
that's for you, Marquette.
Peace to the saints. Excellent discussion. Indeed it is. You caught up? Okay, you're scrolling through.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, let me look back through my questions, make sure I got everything. So we got the race and gender. We got the goal of Black feminism, kind of. We got the differences historically, which I really like that one. What would you say would be, is it, one thing I find very common, you had said, Marquette, you're judgmental. And I agree with you. I agree with you there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You're right. I am judgmental.
And I think we all are. We all,
Absolutely.
Because it's part of the way we sustain ourselves. Our beliefs.
I don't know about that. I think human nature is to judge, assess, evaluate, and it's a necessity to survival even.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a way of sustaining.
And for me, having been mentored and having been fathered and mothered, I was always judged, and I appreciated when a standard could be set and I could be set on a path and like, hey, you're a little bit off track. Hey, you need to do this. And I appreciate that. And now being in the position of a mature person who can give guidance and support, I absolutely try to give accurate judgment and support with it. The challenge is when we fall to insult and actual hatred, when you actually don't like someone. And I think that's why we become very dangerous when we do get in a hatred. And I think that when we call someone a misogynist or a misandrist and they're not, then we're watering down the word.
When you call someone, when you frame all feminists as being LGBTQ, and when you talk about feminism, but you toss in the fact that, oh yeah, they're probably queer or they're, whatever.
No, they were factually in that case.
Well, the point is, though, you have the same impact as you say that I'm having when I call you what you have said misogynistic. And I'm not calling you a misogynist. I'm saying that is misogynist. I should correct myself and said that statement was misogynistic. But my point is that if you want to water down what is being said about feminists, then you need to look at the fact that you are equating feminism with homosexuality, and homosexuality you conflate with pedophilia. And then you say the data supports all that. That to me is not, it doesn't help. It's not productive. And I don't care what data you're looking at. I mean, I studied advanced statistics myself, and I looked at data until my eyes turned blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you can make statistics say whatever you want them to say. You can apply them in a way that makes the statement you want them to make. And that's one of the first things you learn in graduate school. And that's why I always tell people, if you're going to go to graduate school, make sure you take statistics. And especially if you think you're going to help people of color or help women, you need to understand how data is gathered and how data is interpreted, and then how data is used.
I'm a true believer that most of the people who go to school, and especially those who go into policy, from my experience, are going in for impure reasons and are there for the purposes of self-aggrandizement. I find that government is absolutely wicked, and the people who would go into government are...
I won't paint them all. I won't tar them all with that
brush. Absolutely
I understand.
wicked.
I can see why you would, honestly, I can see your perspective. I can see why you would think that, but I don't agree that everyone who goes in...
I can't speak at 100%, but what I can tell you...
I will agree with you. I will agree with this with you. Is that I think, for example, the Congress we have now is nothing like, you're much younger than I am, but the Congress we have now is nothing like the one we had years ago when people actually worked together. Even though you didn't have as many Blacks in the group, people actually worked together and were more, how shall we say, collegial than we have now. So that goes to your point about government, people going into government for self-aggrandizement and this, that, and the other. I would have to agree with you, sadly.
Is all bad. And I don't care if it's the left or the right. One thing...
I don't think it's all bad, but I think a lot of it is bad.
it's so bad that I think it's truly dangerous. Like,
It
for
is.
example,
There are parts that are dangerous. Yes.
if you, number one, we're the most advanced country in the world, and we are a wealthy country. You go to Costa Rica and you can drive on roads without any potholes. That doesn't make any sense.
You have childcare. You have childcare in the other countries. You have, the infant mortality rate. When you look at these kinds of things, the infant mortality rate in certain communities in the area, in urban areas, when you have, infant mortality rates that exceed third world countries.
Correct.
There is something totally wrong about that.
And water
pollution
in Flint, Michigan.
I was going to say the Flint, Michigan.
In black neighborhoods under a black president.
Well,
give me a break here.
Well, whatever. The thing is, you have to ask yourself, yeah, this happened on his watch, but how much
it's still going on too.
Well,
it happened under everybody's watch.
The question is, how much power did he have, and who backed him? Because that's another political. That's a whole other.
And I'm not going to get into politics. One thing, I'm not going to make excuses for him. I won't make excuses for the guy who followed him, which is Trump. They're both dead wrong and they're both disgusting. If you can afford to go abroad and create murder, you can create life here. It's disgusting. It's unacceptable, and it's still going on today. And that is clear evidence that the government is rotten. But I'm not going to talk politics because we're not talking politics. I was just talking clean water, and I always encourage these guys, because when they complain about alimony laws and all these things that they feel like are disadvantaging them, I say, well, even
disadvantaging men,
right? Even, and sorry, I didn't mean to touch you, but even though I don't believe in this government, I still say register to vote and vote.
Oh, absolutely,
right,
absolutely, because otherwise you won't make any change.
I think there's ways to make change, but you're going to be victim for sure. Like, if you don't vote, you're for sure going to be victim. Like, it's just undeniable. Ramsey writes, trusted data show women over 30 are likely to quit desirable roles like investment banking and legal careers to start a family. This doesn't exist with male competition. Would you say males have a fair or unfair advantage in that?
Well, I think they have an advantage, because when women have children, there is a period of time they need to stay home. Hopefully. Okay. Yeah. Unless they have to go,
doing it right.
Unless they have to go back to the fields or something. And again, we're talking about a certain strata of women. Okay. He just mentioned.
Oh, the women
investment banking and legal careers. Yeah, exactly. They tend to have more. Benefits. They tend
paid
to have
leave,
things like that.
Leave,
But then, again, that is a certain group of women, and frankly, that's a group of women that white feminists tend to talk about, that tend to speak to. All right.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply to all black women or to women of color generally. And a lot of white women it doesn't apply to either.
Correct.
So you're talking about a class structure here. And so would you say males have a fair or unfair advantage? I would say, depending on the situation, men have an unfair advantage in that sense, because the other part of this is, all right, let's say she wants to go back to work. Where's the childcare? There is no childcare unless you then turn around and exploit a third world woman.
Is it exploiting if you're giving her a job that's much better than a job where she came from?
Well, it depends on what you call a much better job. If you're talking about an 80-hour week at $7 a minimum pay and no insurance, my daughter, for example, my daughter's an executive with a company.
Okay.
She pays a salary, she pays her Social Security, and she pays her healthcare benefits, her nanny.
The nanny. Okay.
Yeah, and she's had her nanny for, 12 years. She's had her for 12 years. Most women either can't do that or don't do that. And so the thing is, to say, she's better than picking tomatoes back in, Costa Rica or,
for sure,
Central America or whatever, kind of misses the point. It's still exploitation.
So you're saying so I'll tell you, to offer someone an opportunity is exploitation?
No, you skipped a few things there. To offer someone a job in which they're not making, they're not receiving benefits, they're working long hours, and they have very little pay, that is exploitation.
Not in a free market system where they can go and find a different employer.
Maybe they can, or maybe they can't.
But that's not your responsibility as the employer
Actually,
to provide
if
them
we're
with that
talking about the
opportunity.
breakdown, actually, Marquette, if we're talking about the breakdown of society in which we don't care about what the other person, how the other person lives or what they have to do, then yes, that is exploitation. And we're talking about, I mean, this is one of the things that feminists, Black feminists look at. Again, we're looking at the intersections. And when we look at who is being exploited, because for so long,
well, we're not talking about the
ones,
foreign woman right now. That the foreign woman, that's a whole different issue.
Well,
though.
We're talking about both women. We're talking about foreign women, and we're talking about women here, because so often the women who are involved in childcare and housekeeping in the home are women who are at the margins, who are disadvantaged for one reason or another. You have these women working. New York is a really, the women, they profiled a woman she worked very long hours for out in Long Island. I don't know New York all that well. Yes. Long Island, somewhere like that. Would ride the train home. Her 3 children were at home by themselves. Thanksgiving Day, she was served. Yeah, well, that is a form of exploitation.
It's not. You know what I find very exploitive? If you would have kids that you knew you could not provide for, I find that to be disgusting. Because I would never lay down with a woman and procreate a child that I did not have the time for and the money for, because it's my choice to bring that kid into the world.
You're absolutely correct.
That's the criminal aspect. So that woman who has to go work all those hours and neglect her 3 children, both her and that man, in my opinion, are completely in error.
Marquette, that's easy to say, and I can see where you're coming from on that based on other things that you've said earlier in this conversation. But that's the reality that many people have to live with. And
you make the bed, you sleep in it.
See, that's the conservative position. That is the position. Yes. That is a right-wing position.
I just call it rational.
It's rational to you, but for people who have to live it, who may not have other choices.
No, they had a choice, which is to use a condom.
Well,
was that not a choice to use a condom?
The thing is, poverty. Of course it is.
Right.
So why? But at the same time, life is not like that. Life is not cut and dried like that.
I agree. I mean, if they made a mistake, so be it. But I think it's very foul to turn around after they make a mistake and then say, I'm exploiting them.
Okay.
If I give them a job, I would think I'm helping them. In fact, I'm providing for their family.
Would you pay them benefits?
I honestly would pay them what they're worth. And this is what I mean. I'll give you an example. I pay them what they're worth.
Okay.
And what they're worth is what the market has decided. So for example, I have hired many people in many different types of jobs. When I made a mistake one time and hired a male assistant, it went terribly because males are not very good with details, generally speaking. They don't remember as well. They're not as good with details. And the science verifies that. They can't see the same spectrum of color. They can't even hear the same number of frequency as a female. Now, when I've hired female assistants, I'm always, as a capitalist, I'm like, okay, what's the lowest amount I can pay for the best person? That's the formula. The lowest amount I can pay for the best person. And what I kept finding, okay, $20 an hour. Nah, she's not getting the job done. Okay, now $25 an hour. Ooh, she's not good enough. $30 an hour. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, she has the education. She's good with that rate. And I'm going to increase the rate to get the person who can get the job done. It's a market rate.
And that makes sense. But if
I have to go to $100, I'll go to $100.
If you can afford to do that. But if you look at the market generally, and you are a person who is hiring other people, maybe you can't afford to go to $25 an hour for childcare.
Oh, I wasn't talking about childcare because I don't have any kids. I was just talking about an assistant.
No, what I'm saying is, we were talking about the lady who went to Long Island and had to leave her children at home for Thanksgiving or whatever. And what she's getting paid is probably the market rate out in Long Island or wherever we're talking about. But is that a fair wage for what she's doing? Maybe to you, maybe to her employer, she's only worth $10 an hour.
Right.
Yeah. And so if the market in that area is $10 an hour for the kind of work that she's doing,
right? She's about to get $10.
She's about to get $10.
She's about to get $10.
Yeah, and that's the
maybe
point.
11 if it's a holiday.
So the question is, can you pay people more? And this is where you look at Black feminist thought and radical feminist thought, and that's when people say that you have to pay more. You need to make sure that people are earning a good wage, and childcare cannot be devalued, and housework, female work cannot be devalued.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I agree with you there.
And that's what we're dealing with.
We're 100% agreed on female work cannot be devalued. And one of the major errors in the society, and I think it's even historically, is that you'll have a guy who will go outside of the home and do whatever he does, whether he's a janitor or a CEO. And then the mother who might stay home with the children, or even a housewife or a homemaker who might stay home and handle the affairs there. And then they come home and they think what they did was more important than what the woman did.
Exactly.
That is very wrong and evil. And that's the
I would agree with you.
That's the root of a lot of the problems we have today, is that men have undervalued the equally valuable work of the female.
Then we're not far apart when it comes to when we talk about feminist thought, because that is one of the thinking.
I told you I'm a feminist, but you didn't believe me.
Well, it's not a question I didn't believe you. It's just that I was listening to your words and getting a different perspective in some cases, not all cases.
Well, that's because unlike the theorists, I'm a practitioner, and so I have to think in reality and not in academia.
Well, actually, all of us, and I'm not going to argue with you about that, because it is very true that some people are very theoretical as opposed to real life. But that's what makes life interesting.
But one thing with regards to the, okay, ooh, goodness, oh, it started flying. Okay, let's see if they have any quick questions for you, and then we'll wind down, folks. If you have any quick questions, now's the time. Dr. Williams has to run, and I appreciate your time so much, by the way, having been here to share this perspective.
Well, actually, this kept me really sharp. My husband and I used to have debates all the time before he became ill. But it's that this is, and I can tell when he's getting well, because we started having debates again about stuff. But it's been very interesting to talk to somebody who has the point of view that you hold. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I see you've got one of the reason that I don't do social media is because there are always trolls out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are always.
Absolutely,
I
guaranteed.
And the thing is, I don't want to become cynical. And because as I tell my students all the time, this classroom is a safe space. We can disagree, but we can disagree disagreeably.
Yes, be civilized.
And be civilized about it, and I'm all for that. And so to the extent that we've been able to keep this very civilized, I have learned a lot listening to you. And I do appreciate some of the questions were a little off.
Of course, it's the internet.
Yeah, it's the internet. Right, what can you say? But it also reinforces my determination not to get a social media account.
Stay away.
I don't even like it. We do need to get Dr. Williams out of here. Let me just read this real quick. Peace of the Saints. What legislative/government protected rights do men have that women don't have as American Western citizens? What type of equality are feminists? I kind of actually already asked Dr. Williams that one. We had talked about the workplace. You want to scroll through real quick, see if there's any big ones that she might be able to address. I imagine a team of women was given direction to increase accountability and quality improvement of our team. They reacted to a new structure by accusing me of racism, sexism, and the patriarchy. Oh, they hit you with the patriarchy. Any advice?
My advice would be you need some retreats. I mean, maybe you're the kind of person who could lead one. You need some retreats in which people have a chance to talk about why they said that. Why do they feel that is happening? And so that you have some real dialogue and communication. I'm a very big person on communicating, saying what you really think. And it's something that you and I touched on very early in the conversation about culture. There are some cultures in which not everybody fits.
Right.
Correct. The simple fact is not everybody fits in that culture. And it has nothing to do with race, may have nothing to do with gender. It's just that personality doesn't fit there. And lacking a better term for it, people will say it's a patriarchy, it's sexist, it's racist, it's all these other negative things. Women don't like men, or men don't like women, and that's because there's a culture there that hasn't been refined so that it's accepting and nurturing of everyone who comes into it.
There you go.
This is from a female right here.
why is there a push for women to do things that they don't want to do? What is the why behind all this indoctrination for young girls?
I'm not sure what indoctrination she's turning to do. If women don't want to do certain things, they don't have to. I mean, the simple fact is, I know, we had the Virginia Slims commercials years and years ago. You've come a long way, baby. Really encouraging women to smoke by having these examples, these icons of women smoking cigarettes and doing athletic things, which was crazy. Yeah, which is crazy. But I think that one of the I think that one of the things that really happens is that what was I'm sorry, I kind of got off the
folks. We're I need to be respectful of Dr. Williams' time. We are over time, and I so wish we could get some more questions answered, but we have to roll. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It has been truly a pleasure, and I'm excited to like check back and see what they were thinking and experiencing, because I think that when folks like you and I find a middle, because I find you to be a reasonable feminist. I do. I find you to be a reasonable feminist.
And I think you're a reasonable person.
Yeah. I follow Marquettism. I'm a Marquettist. But I think when we can talk and start unpacking some of what we might perceive as differences, we find that a lot of times we want the same outcome. And if we can figure out how to collaborate, we can get there, because I think we all want good things for the most part. And so I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and being willing to have a tough conversation with me.
Well, I thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the tough questions.
Oh, can you click